to address the Board of Directors at any time during the meeting, we have speakers cards on the back if you find you want to address the board relative to an agenda item. If you fill that out and hand that to our secretary, please. I have one card. We have Kim Morris who wants to address the board regarding a non-agenda item. There you are.
Is that my cue?
That is your cue.
I've never been to a board meeting, so.
Well, welcome and thank you for coming.
Do I just sit here? I don't even know what to do.
Stand up and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Kim Morris, and I am the school psychologist here at the Palmdale Aerospace Academy. Last year was my first year here, but it's actually my 38th year in this business, and definitely love it and love the kids that we impact on a daily basis. What I want to say, when I came here last year, I was very concerned about a couple of things that I saw. One is our service delivery model for special education students. We only offer that push-in service, which works for about this many students. It does not service across the board all of our special education students, and I feel like that's evidenced by the amount of D's and F's that we can take a look at and see how much our students are not progressing, really. So another thing that concerned me was I've heard multiple times since I've been here that these kids don't belong here, that we need to get them out of here, and that's concerning because we're a public school. We're here to educate everybody, regardless of any disability or anything. That's what we're tasked to do, is to provide a free and appropriate education to all of our students. So I just want to say we had an amazing training today. I'm excited about the direction and hope for the direction that our special education is going to move towards. And I just want to say that I support everyone in that endeavor.
Thank you very much. Are there any other cards? Okay. And we will move on. Item number 5. We have a staff report regarding attendance interventions.
Good evening, directors, Ms. Dury. My name is Mr. Malcolm, representing the Power attendance team, and going to give you a little bit of background on where we are with our attendance. Last year, we did a study in the counseling department when I was a counselor over there. We were taking a look at why. We wanted to get to the root cause of why our students were failing. We looked at every kid that had multiple D's and F's, a combination of 3 or more, but regardless of whether it was 2 F's and a D or 2 D's and an F. And so we dug, and eventually I went to the CUME files. When we were looking at the CUME files, we found one thing clearly evident, and that was attendance. We would look at the attendance record of our students, and of the 15 that I was studying, we had 4 kids on that list that had missed greater than 100 days from 1st to 6th grade. And we had 2 kids on there in excess of 200 days between 1st and 6th grade. So we dug deeper into that, and we found that we were inheriting a lot of our students that had chronic absenteeism. And so we kind of took a different road and wanted to see what we could do to correct this attendance problem that we have. And so if you open up the blue folder on that very first page, you're going to see an overview, and this is where we are currently as of 12 November. And I'm looking at this one right here with the little table on there. And that's a breakdown of the number of students that we have. So the number of enrolled students in TK, we have 22, and to the right of that, you'll see 13 are currently chronically absent at 59%. And then if you just go across, kinder is 96 students enrolled, 21 chronically absent at 22%. So those are 2 of our areas that we're targeting right now and trying to correct that trend. I know Mr. Bari, you guys have parent-teacher conferences all week, and we are addressing that over there. We've identified every single student, and we're having those conversations with the parents. Furthermore, I'm going to get into some home visits and other things that we're doing. But down here at the bottom, I definitely want to make you aware, if you're not familiar with what chronic absenteeism is, it's missing 10% of the days from the date of enrollment to the current date. And because we had different start times for elementary school and high school, that's 38 days for elementary school, and currently, as of 12 November, was 65 days. So anybody that's missed 4 or more days for elementary, or 6 or more days for our middle school and high school. And turning the page, the dashboard, when we're targeting this dashboard and trying to improve that, we are only looking at TK through 8. Those are our areas of focus to fix our dashboard. In elementary school and middle school combined, even though we're 2 different sides of the campus, we have 139 students. And at a rate right now of 0.09, which is something that we want to work on, but when we compare ourselves in different schools in the valley, Lancaster's and up in the 20% chronic absenteeism rate, and Keppel's at 23%. So we're doing pretty good there. Our high school rate is 0.11, 11% there. And so when I gathered the data, one of the things that I was looking at is just trying to find out, where is this problem? Who do we need to address? Who do we need to have a talk to? So we have 246 students that are currently on our list at TPAA, both elementary and high school, middle school. That composes 201 families that have those 246 kids, and 31 of those families have 2 or more students on the list, for a total of 79 students, which is 32% of our issue. 32% of our chronic absenteeism issue is with 31 families. So talk a little bit about our power attendance team, and this is where we're developing our action plan. And so in that, it's composed of Mr. Dilger, our 2 principals, campus supervisors, counselors, and what we do is we look at the whole person. What's going on with this person? We're looking to see if there's discipline issues. We're looking to see is there personal issues, health issues. We need to know who is the person that we're trying to counsel. What can we do to help them and help their family? So what we do is once we identify that, we are putting a package together to address those families and those students. And again, we're targeting, when I say targeting, we're targeting our intervention into how we can help each and every one. One of the things that we did last year is we had 157 right before the Christmas break families that we wanted to talk to, and we put together a nice presentation for them, and we had 5 families show up. And we invited those families multiple times. We sent out notifications 3 times in 1 week, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we did all calls, we sent letters home, and we only had 5 families show up. So we kind of took a different direction, and we said, okay, if they're not going to come to us, let's go to them. And so we did home visits. We did some home visits on the 21st of October. We identified 17 families that had 30 plus kids. And looking at that, it was 38 students. When you look at the data from October 22nd, and I went up as of yesterday, or not yesterday, but last Friday, 47% of those students that we visited have not missed a single day since our home visit. I like that. I like that a lot. 13% missed 1 day. So 60% right there is missed 0 to a day. I think that was pretty good, looks promising, and we're going to ramp those visits up again when we return from the Thanksgiving break. And so we're going to go back out and address those families again, some new families and so forth. One of the things that we're looking at also is high school. Even though high school is not on the dashboard, what we want to do is we're trying to figure out a way to get them engaged. What is it we can do to bring them in? And we have talked to them. We've done everything we can, counseling, attendance contracts. We've talked to their parents. We've gone out and visited them. And it's a hard sell. It's really hard to get them to come to school when they have a history of chronic absenteeism. But we're not giving up. And some of the things that Mr. Dilger and our attendance team and all of us have come up with is we're looking at prom formal sports clubs as a method with behavior contracts. If you're not coming to school, you can lose these activities, the participation in those activities. The other thing down there is you'll see in your packet, there is a driver's license. Basically, it's a form, and this is what I'm looking at right here. And the DMV in the California Ed Code allows us to put this application in for high school students that are chronically absent if they don't conform. And so I'm going to come back to this here in a minute, and I'll explain, this isn't something that we want to do right away. We definitely want to provide some intervention before we get there. But what our team is doing and our attendance team is doing is every single day, we contact 100% of our families that are absent. Once they become truant, chronically absent, we're sending out these 2 letters. We have the first letter, the notification of truancy, and then a second letter right after that when they miss an additional day. So we notify them according to Ed Code right away. And we're doing that part. And then again, we're having those personal conversations with them. So we don't want to be vindictive or over the top when we come to addressing this problem. But what we do is we want the results. We want our kids in school. We want them to take that education with them and utilize every opportunity that they have here. Some of the things that we're finding out is parents aren't educated when it comes to attendance. They're coming here with preconceived ideas from different districts. So we created, Dr. Porter has the pamphlet right there. We created a pamphlet for them, and that'll be in your packet. And this explains pretty much everything that they need to know, how they're compelled to bring their students to school from 6 years old and on up. Talks about what an excused absence is, what's an unexcused absence, and what the difference between an excused and unexcused absence is. And so we provide this for every parent. Then after this, another thing that we're finding out is vacations. And on the page, on the back page here, you'll see that I have some vacations up here. And this is a huge problem that we're facing every year. And on that one, this is just the current list. We have a family that wants to take 14 additional days off. And I don't want to, there's some sensitive information on here, so I really don't want to blast it out all over the world, so please forgive me there. But you can read, why they want to do that. And, 14 days, especially when the student does have multiple Fs and multiple Ds. And we do have those counsel with them, we do talk with them, but they take their students in anyways, and they go on those vacations. We've had, last year we had a student go to Spain for 2 weeks for a soccer tryout, and during the middle of the school year. And so we counsel against it, and especially since that student had 6 Fs all the way on down the board. And so this is some of the things that we're fighting on our end. One of the things that we're asking you is in SP002, board policy SP002, which is our attendance policy, it recommends that we have a SAR. In speaking with LA County Office of Education, we can't participate in the SAR. It also recommends that we go to our sheriff, student resource officer, or district attorney. We have made those phone calls and we're not getting the support there. They won't ticket, they won't file charges or work with the parents. So what we would like to do is take a little bit more of a compassionate and develop our SART team. And on there, you can see that the recommendation there is for a board member on this team, or 2, the principals, the counselor, teacher, and a member from the community. And to listen to our families So when we go through this whole process of counseling, when we go through every option that we have to address the problem, the final is we're gonna go to the SART team. The SART team would make a recommendation, give them an attendance contract. Then if they don't adhere to the contract, then it comes back to the SART team. At that point, the SART team would make a decision. One of the last things in the SP 002 is whether or not they stay at the school. I don't want that decision, but I think that would be a decision that the SART team would then give to the board. And then you guys would make a determination. Because we have, like right now, we have students at 35 absences.
That particular one,
Excuse me, sir?
that particular issue
Is-
of discharging a student for poor attendance, I would never favor.
I understand that. It's in our board policy, but we're trying to figure out a way, how do we fix it? Yes, ma'am.
The unacceptable reasons for student absences, where were those? Are those in our bio, somewhere in our
So,
school policies or?
They're in Ed Code. They're right from Ed Code.
Really?
And so some of them that are in there, they address, and others are ones that come up. So like transportation, babysitting, shopping,
Personal problems?
personal problems,
That could be almost anything.
and it can be, but they're not approved through Ed Code.
In the big picture, if a student misses considerable amount of school, as far as being a chronic absentee, it makes no difference whether it's excused or unexcused. The difference is if it's excused absence for medical reasons, then staff should be making recommendations for some sort of home teaching. Say a child has a medical condition, they're going to be out for 3 weeks because they broke a leg or had surgery or whatever. It does make a difference that that's an excused absence with a legitimate medical rationale. And of course, then that covers the absence.
Would
Then
there
it
be an
wouldn't be.
academic plan in
Then it
place
wouldn't be
for that?
it wouldn't be an
There would
absence.
be an academic plan
It wouldn't be
in
an
place for that.
absence then. The unexcused ones are harder to deal with, and it really gets to be, what kind of relationship the school has with families. But in the big picture, if a kid misses a bunch of school, it doesn't make any difference what the reason is. You can't learn anything if you're not there.
So we don't have a policy in place that I know that if I have to take my student to New York for 2 weeks, there are not packets they take with them that gives them independent
Short-term
study.
independent
So
study.
do we not have that in
So a
place?
teacher always has the option. We always tell our students, coordinate that with your teachers. You get the work, be proactive if you know you're gonna go.
There's no school policy
But-
for that.
We do go by Ed Code, and if it's an excused absence, 100% guaranteed that student will be allowed to make it up. There is, in working with Dr. Herman on this issue, what was told to us was that there is no independent study. And so if they're gonna be going out long-term for that, we don't have that independent study option to work with each individual teacher to get the work
Would that
and
be
do
a
it.
beneficial option for your team
Yes,
to
ma'am.
have?
And
Absolutely.
actually, 2 or 3 weeks is not considered long-term independent study.
No,
That's
it's not.
short-term.
That's short term.
Wait,
Okay.
couple questions. One
Yes,
is,
sir.
is this in Spanish?
Yes, it is.
You have that in Spanish?
I forgot to mention that, but we did do it in Spanish as well. And the letters and everything else is in Spanish as well.
So, there's a couple things that I'm hearing. One is, from your presentation, which I thank you, I'm really shocked with the TK and K area that just kind of, and I think part of, maybe some of this can be cultural, I don't know. I don't know if the kids are Hispanic or white or whatever, but I'm wondering if there's a cultural thing there that could be going on too.
Pretty standard in elementary,
But it's pretty standard.
unfortunately. It's high, I don't like it, but
Worst
it's
attendance is always K.
TKK.
One of the things is, we don't have a SART team right now, correct?
That's true.
Okay, so part of what I'm hearing is developing a SART team. Another thing that I'm hearing is we need to have some policy, it seems like, on some type of short-term independent study, which the way I've, being in the high school, the way that was initiated was the parent would always call and say, listen, I'm gonna take my kid out for 2 weeks. And it was never initiated with kids talking to their, so I understand because we don't have policy. So it sounds like one of the things that we need is that some of these interventions that the attendance team would like to do, it seems to develop some policy for us to have become part of our agenda for us to look at and approve, or either approve it or disapprove it. Because I think the SART team is a good one. I like the idea of having some board members possibly on it. I don't think that would be a problem. But I think what we're really seeing here in this presentation is now we need, what do you as the attendance, your group need for policy to help implement some of these things though, so that we can start turning some of this chronic absenteeism around?
I'm gonna defer to Mr. Dilger. He and I have been working on it, and he's our author.
You hit the nail on the head. We absolutely need to put a policy in front of the board here that dictates exactly these steps that not only support the style, but also, if this continues, progressively harder and harder steps to turn the direction around. We already have a policy pretty much ready, tidy to go. And so what I would like to do is present it to the board at the next meeting, and you guys can tear it apart, get your input on it, and we can move forward from there. But this policy will entail the creation of the SART team. It will entail some of these direct procedures in terms of home visits, in terms of when to send the letters out, who will make up the SART team, those specifics that we need to go through as a team, and I would like the board to go through. So that's a commitment I would like to make.
Does it
Please.
include short-term,
That is something we haven't
independent
discussed,
study?
but I think we're gonna put it on the table based off of what I'm hearing in today's meeting.
Absolutely. I also would like to see, I see some sticks, they're gentle, and I approve of gentle sticks. But I'd also like to see some carrots, particularly at the elementary level and maybe even at the high school. What can we do to encourage you to come rather than threaten you with you don't come?
And we do have that.
Do you have
Yes,
that?
ma'am.
I'd like to.
I don't want to step on toes. Sabari, do you want to?
You can go ahead.
Go ahead? Okay. So you're spot on there. So some of the things that we talk about is competitions within the classes. Who can have the highest attendance rate to motivate them there? Early in the year, we designed some bag tags for the kids for 100% attendance. And then Mr. Morales kind of led that up and got me steered in that direction. So we have bag tags that are TPAA, and then every month they put that on their little chain that they were perfect attendance for September, October, November, pizza parties and things like that for really outstanding attendance. And basically making everybody aware and recognizing those students with great attendance. And then again, compassionately working with those that, I want to make sure that's clear, is when we do the home visit, it's a relationship building, basic adventure there. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple questions. First of all, just for clarification, so the chronic absenteeism includes excused absences? Like
They're
illness?
both excused and unexcused.
And then other than illness and vacations, are there other things that jump out as common root causes where maybe we could be providing support or resources?
Besides vacation, and what was the other one?
And the illness, which we can't do much about.
We have transportation issues, the students with transportation, so we're working with PTSO to set up some type of network there where parents can, hey, can you pick up my kid today, and so forth, and doing that with PTSO. Some of the issues, honestly, it boils down to engagement and kids just not coming. there's no valid number one reason. Illness is always there.
Yeah.
Vacation crops up. And you would think, okay, through Thanksgiving or Christmas, you would see a jump. It's not those time frames. Last year, February doubled the next highest month. I don't know why, but we went and explored it, and looked at all the absentee or the notes, as to why they were absent. There was no number one reason. God, I'm old. I lost one of my thoughts in there, but there was something that I wanted to address, and I can't figure out what it was, and it pops up all. Yes,
Your experience with the kids that got a visit.
Yes.
I will tell you that is not a freak or an isolated case. Having done this for years, our experience is every parent contact does about half the group. So if you started off with 100 kids with bad attendance, if you send them a letter, well, that does it for about half. If you send the remainder another letter, that usually cuts that in half. So the contact gets to be really, really important. And the two folks that are, my experience is, that have the greatest impact are the principal and the classroom teacher, because they are the closest to the action. And the more you contact, and like Kathy said about the carrot, if you believe in the adage that you can lead a horse to water but you can't make it drink, then the secret here is you got to make some thirsty horses, because then they'll show up on their own. Because you can't punish them into getting better attendance. It just doesn't work.
One thing I notice here is, the parent does have a big, we can give, incentivize attendance with students, but parents are the ones that get, and I'm looking at all these reasons, and the parents are the ones that really made the choice in most of these as to the child not being there. So in some way, it's really important. The contact with the parent is important,
It's huge.
but some kind of acknowledgement of the parents whose children are even making progress to better attendance or something would be huge.
So thank you for bringing the thought back. Okay, so for that right there, the vacation. One of the things that we would like to do with that is if the parent does want to go on vacation, we want to make it a process that they do come to the SART team. And, they talk to the counselor, they talk to the teachers, and they go through that whole process, and then it ends up where they talk to the SART team and explain to the SART team why they want to go on vacation. And then the SART team can make a recommendation as well. And that way the board is fully aware of the number of families that we do have going on.
I think it's important that we put in place a limited term independent study program, because we will have parents who are going to insist, and their reasons are valid to them. We're not going to overcome, but we don't want to interfere in what their family is doing, but we have to support that education
We have
piece. So,
expectations.
absolutely. So when you bring your policy, I'd like to see limited term independent study as part of that, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Plus, it's a way to recapture some of the lost.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
And maybe it's the way you said it, but you want the parents to come to the SAR team and explain why they want to.
Not so much explain why, but have that part of the process. Because some of, like with my student that went to Spain for 2 weeks to go to soccer, and then came back and then went to Texas for another couple of weeks. To go through that process, that there's a process where it's not just me saying no.
Right.
Have it the team, the SART team address that, and not one person.
So as part of the education process of why extended absences or frequent absences are a bad
And that way
idea.
we also have that accountability. It's because I've got to answer, I answer to my bosses, and then the same thing, we have to answer to our board. And so that way it's transparent and it's all there.
And how are the PTSO working on the transportation?
It's something that we're going to pitch to them. We've had a little conversations now, but what we
I'm-
want to do.
I'm gonna ask you not to have those
I was
conversations.
gonna say, 'cause that scares me.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna ask you not to have those conversations, and as you work through this with Mr. Dilger and a couple board members, we can come up with some other acceptable substitutes for
Okay.
that, okay?
We have thrown the conversations around about even, is it financially viable to pick up students in our vans and other things like that? When we start looking at the number of kids that we can pick up.
Hang on to that transportation piece just a little
All right,
longer,
ma'am.
okay?
I saw, yes, sir.
It's not part of policy, but I would like you guys, the attendance team, to kind of think about, we're talking about carrots. Carrots sometimes cost, but I think this is a worthwhile cost to have certain things that especially elementary kids can, earn, whatever. So, I would like to see it separate from the policy, but a little bit of an idea of putting some money into an attendance, pot that could be used by teachers, by administrators, whatever, to give rewards for kids, and even for some of these kids, if they go 5 days, come to school 5 days, I want them to have something, because that's, for some of them, is gonna be, that's a long time.
That's a big win.
So,
Yes, sir.
Years ago, we had a counselor that once a month would personally go through every classroom, second period, third period, whatever. And she would have a sucker and a note thanking the student for their perfect attendance for the last 30 days. And she just walk in your classroom and start handing out. Everybody, after the first 2 times she did it, the kids were anticipating it. And it became a real thing for them. So that's something you might consider doing, especially with the little kids. But it was working. I was in middle school. It was working for the middle school. So,
And for changing behavior, rewarding the incremental goal is better than if you do a cumulative 100% and you start passing out rewards for that, all you've done is congratulate the kids that are going to show up anyway, because they already have. And that's going to do nothing for the kid that's missed 20 days, because he's never going to get that. So why should he care about the reward you gave to the kids that are getting here all the time?
It is a balance between the two.
Yes. It's okay to acknowledge, but that won't get better attendance. But you need to thank the kids that showed up.
Yes, sir.
One other question, just for context, what's the breakdown like between the kids who have missed 4 days at the TK level and the people who have missed dozens and dozens of days? Like one of the things said in here that there's a kid that missed 9 days since the end of October, so that's only been a few weeks. That seems a lot more egregious to me. So are those kind of
Okay,
far
so,
and few between?
no,
or
that's the
is
student, there's actually 2 students on there, I believe it's 6 and 9. Again, it's gonna get into some personal stuff there,
But is
but
that
there was
more
a history.
infrequent, or is that more common?
That, I'm gonna say, is an outlier because 2 of those students were suspended,
Okay.
for other issues. So those days counted in there, but I wasn't not gonna put that data in.
Okay.
No good reason not to suspend.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a sense of the extent of where the more extreme issues are.
You bet.
The more extreme issues,
Like to me, if you're out sick for 4 days and you got really sick 1 week, that doesn't seem as bad as if you're missing 4 weeks of school at a time or every other week.
and we do have those. We do have those students, and we're finding it can be anxiety. There's a multitude of issues. And the counseling department, the attendance team, we all address it as a team. And we're trying to work at it, our teachers, trying to motivate it, build that relationship and so forth. Ma'am, thank you.
Thank you very much. So Paul, you will bring back a policy to us.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll get moving, and I can promise you, you will have board support for your SART team. Maybe more than you want, so you might want to limit us a little bit there.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 6, financial report, first interim budget.
right, good evening, everybody. So back to that time of the year for the first interim report. And so this is the actuals through the month of October, as well as an updated projection through the end of the fiscal year. So in terms of summaries as compared to the original budget that was approved, the state LCFF increase was 3.26%. And so that does affect and impact the vast majority of the school funds as it's the biggest line item. As a reminder, there was no one-time funds this year. So as the past couple of years, the state had provided one-time funds for various specific purposes, but that was excluded this year. There also was no increase in the SB 740 pool. So for those of you who don't remember, SB 740 is the funding mechanism that reimburses for facility costs. So one of the things that we've been very closely monitoring from a long-term fiscal sustainability perspective is how that program is going to continue to be funded and ensure that it continues to provide basically the necessary funding to help support the cost of the facilities. The fourth bullet there was, the flip side to the no one-time funds, there was an actual decrease in the STIRS contribution. So originally this was projected at 18.13%. That's now dropped to 16.73%. So it does actually become a significant amount of savings when you look at the dollars involved for your staffing costs.
But that was one time only, right?
Correct. Well, it gets reviewed and approved on an annual
Yeah.
basis.
It's not 1710.
The next two bullets have to do with the debt requirements and the coverage ratios. And so again, these were requirements put in place as a part of the bond financing. So the first one has to do with the projected days cash on hand. So this is measured as of June 30th every single year. The minimum that's required to be maintained is 45 days. And so we're currently projecting, based on the current budget and cash flows, ending this year with 98 days cash on hand. So definitely plenty of comfortable coverage from that standpoint. The next one, which is a little bit closer, is the debt service coverage. And so what this looks at is your annual operating surplus. So if you did not have this covenant in place, essentially what you would look to do as board members is maintain a balanced budget, or at least a positive surplus. Sometimes even if that's $1, that's what some people's preferences are. What the debt service coverage ratio requires you to do is actually maintain an annual surplus that's higher than that. Based on your rent that you're paying, that comes to about a $500,000 surplus per year. So we can't get to all the way down to that $1 positive and maintain a surplus. We do actually have a higher threshold. And as you can see here, we are projecting to meet that. I'll get into the specifics on the next few slides, but that 0.06 in terms of the coverage equates to about $300,000. So when we're looking at the projected annual surplus, in order to make sure we meet that and don't kind of run into issues at the end of the year, that differential is about $300,000 of actual dollar cost. The last bullet was actually the biggest impact on the budget, and it has to do with the enrollment and the attendance rates. The enrollment that was originally budgeted was 2,314. We currently have in the projections 2,350, and an average daily attendance of 2,256.
That's a big difference.
It's a very big difference. So if you look at the size of the school and the size of the enrollment, a 1% differential in your attendance rate equates to about $325,000. So having those attendance rates up definitely not only has an impact on the instructional program, but finances as well. So the next slide, we're going to go into a little bit of the revenue. So this again is the first interim kind of format of the board summary. You do have a fairly lengthy summary packet for the first interim report, but I did want to hit on some of the highlights. The additional 58 ADA that, as comparison to the budget, did result in about $1.3 million of additional revenue for the school. So it's a significant amount of funds. The vast majority of that does come from your local control funding formula. There were some others that are directly tied to your ADA, which has to do with child nutrition, as well as it raises your kind of the SB 740 limit. The other item, which was fairly significant, has to do with your local funds. So you did receive so far this year $156,000 in interest revenue. That's interest earned on your bond reserves. So again, as a reminder, when the bonds were issued, you are required to establish a debt service reserve, which essentially is equal to 1 year's rent payment. but you are allowed to earn some sort of minimal interest rate on that. It's definitely less than 1%. If you're interested in the actual returns, I could come back with you with that at a future board meeting. But even when you apply those minimal interest rates to a $5.5 million reserve balance, it does start to add up. So that this year, the impact of that in terms of interest revenue is about $156,000. The next slide will go into a little bit of the expenses. There were some things shifting around here a little bit. So in terms of salaries and benefits, there was a total increase of about $814,000. This includes all of the staffing that has taken place up through the end of October, as well as any open positions that were included originally in the budget but not yet filled. In terms of books and supplies, there were a couple things shifting around here as well. The first one and most notable has to do with the non-capitalized equipment. So going all the way back to the very beginning of last fiscal year, the board did approve a significant amount of spending on all of the equipment and furniture for the new elementary school. However, when we actually go through those purchases, some things are capitalized, which means it goes onto your balance sheet. Some things are not capitalized, depending on the individual dollar amount involved. And so the overage this year was about $513,000 related to that elementary school furniture that fell below $1,000 per unit. So again, that all of that is linked back to the original kind of facility construction and actually budget going back into last year. The other kind of significant increase that shows up on your financial statements, but technically isn't as much of a concern from operations, has to do with your depreciation expense. And so as you capitalize more of those assets, there is a depreciation expense that hits your books. It's not checks that you write, but essentially what it's supposed to represent is the amount of money that theoretically you should be putting away or saving so that when that equipment eventually needs to get replaced, you have the funds on hand to be able to absorb that cost. Questions, comments on expenses? So what that leaves us with at the end of the year is go to the next slide, it is a surplus of about $880,000. It's a variance from the original budget surplus of $963,000, which represents about 0.25% of your annual operating budget. So you can see there was a pretty big increase in that average daily attendance and revenue, but it was also offset by a significant amount of that kind of additional cost as well. In terms of your ending reserves, we have indicated here on the interim a 5% reserve for economic uncertainties, and you actually exceed that reserve requirement by about $9.1 million. So again, very comfortable from that standpoint. As a side note, we didn't include it as a bullet point because we are so far above it, but the bond covenants also require a minimum 5% fund balance. You have a very, very long way to slide.
In addition to, or is that the same 5%?
Same 5%.
Thank you.
And then we look at more of a long-term projection. So rolling this out in future years, the 2021 school year and the 21-22 school year are based on general estimates. So what we do is we look at your operating expenses, which ones seem to be one-time in nature and which ones are not. For staffing, we apply a general 2% COLA across the board, and then we take into account the projected increases in the local control funding formula as well. So the board, of course, reviews and approves the budget on an annual basis, but this is kind of a top-level review of the direction that you're heading. And so, as you can see from the numbers up there, we are projecting a balanced budget and surplus year over year, and cash flow balances that are growing. The one important thing to note, though, is again based on how the enrollment were to change or the funding rates from the state, we will need to very closely monitor that surplus for next fiscal year. Because if you take those general assumptions and just roll them forward, as you can see, we're right at that kind of $500,000 mark in terms of the debt service coverage. But again, we'll address that when we go through the budgeting process in the spring. Any? Yes.
I appreciate the depth of the presentation. I enjoy it. And I did confirm that it is 17.1 for STRS, and that is what was factored into the budget.
Sure.
So we're good with that.
Apologize for that.
No, it's fine. The numbers are right, and that's what matters to me the most. When I'm looking at cash flow, because I know we talk a little bit about fund balance and where that is, being the minimum of 5 and us having more cash than that. But I see very clearly in our cash flow that we've got $1 million at the end of November and $2 million worth of expenditures during December, and most of the money we'll get in December comes at the end, like all LCFF revenues. I like to give it to you near the end. So I think we're in really good shape, and I appreciate, the leadership and the team that, has allowed us to be in that place.
Mhm.
But I would just like to caution that as rosy as the picture is with the fund balance, we just barely have enough to be making our ongoing expenditures during the months of November and December when things get very tight. And I anticipate, and you don't have to say yes, that there's someone in your office right now who is monitoring that cash on a daily basis and will adjust expenditures timing-wise to make sure that that doesn't become a challenge for the school. But from a cash flow standpoint, our need to maintain reserves and fund balance is pretty significant if we want to avoid a borrowing situation, which essentially just we're throwing money away in order to borrow it and meet cash flow. So
That's a very good point. So if you look at the kind of a general cash flow for the school, and you look at, if you were to put all of the ending balances, bank balances, kind of in a row, it forms a big bowl shape. So what happens at the beginning of the year is usually when you're hit with the biggest expenses. So if you have any textbooks, technology, things like that, all that money goes out the door to pay for them. But the state payments that you receive are weighted to the back half of the year. So since those two cycles work in opposite, you kind of get this bowl shape. So the cash balance that is measured for bond purposes is at June 30th, but usually the low points in cash are September, October, November, and then starts to trigger back up. This year, by the way, was exacerbated a little bit by the lack of a PenSec payment for the elementary school. And so there would have been triggered a fairly substantial payment, would have hit the bank account the first week in October. But since that first PenSec payment wasn't approved, all those funds get pushed back until the first week in January.
In January, right. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you.
thank you. And thank you for your time the other day. We had an audit committee meeting.
Yes.
But
All right, we will move into the consent agenda. You'll be back. Well, we still have a quorum. We'll move into the consent agenda now. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Is there a board member who wants to pull an item off to discuss separately before we move on? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Items passed, thank you. Field trips, conferences. Item number 8, we're moving into the legislative session. Consideration of memorandum of understanding with California State University, Northridge, CSUN. And as I understand it, this is going to allow one of our intern teachers to complete her credential and get the full credential.
Correct, with the support of us providing oversight and instructional aid and just experience in touching with our most experienced instructors here.
Okay, and didn't I also read that actually CSUN will send a mentor out a couple of times?
So yes, absolutely.
Do
I wish
I-
all the programs had that
Yeah,
option.
wouldn't that be nice? Do I have a motion to approve
I'll move.
and a second?
I'll second.
Gianna, was that you? Thank you. Is there any discussion regarding this item? All those in favor? Aye. That item passes. Item number 9, consideration of memorandum of understanding with Alliant International University. And this is the same item, a different educational institution. Do you have a motion to approve
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion regarding this item?
Just a clarification question. Are these two for different people?
Yes.
Correct.
They are for two different PIP, that's
Yes,
what I
yes.
thought. Yeah.
Alliant does a lot of school psych kind of things. I don't know what else they do besides school
They,
psych and school counseling. But CSUN does, that's probably a teacher.
The Alliant is approved by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and they have all of the processes and procedures and safeguards in place. That was one of the things that we checked. Are there any other
Yeah,
questions?
In my experience with my previous employers, we had several Alliant educated school psychologists.
School psychologists?
Yep.
Anybody else? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the item passes. Consideration, item 10, consideration of 2019-20 first interim budget report. Do I have a motion
So moved.
and a second? Are there any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the first interim budget report has been accepted. Thank you, Spencer. Item number 11, consideration of revised school calendars. Mr. Dilger?
Yeah, this is in reaction to the October 25th large brush fire in Santa Clarita. That greatly impacted our staff's ability to come in and work that day. A lot of them were under mandatory evacuation, the freeways were closed, and given the staffing needs, we had to cancel school that day. To stay in compliance with the ed code, making sure we're giving our students every minute that they deserve, we need to make this up later on in the year. For our middle school, high school, this will be done on April 27th. For our elementary school, they will have one less student-free day over their spring break, which March 24th. And once this is approved, we'll make a proactive communication to our parents to make sure they have plenty of time to plan for these additional days, makeup days, I should say.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion
A motion.
and a second?
What day is March 24th?
I believe it's a Tuesday, but I can get you that clarification.
Tuesday, so they were going to school on Monday?
I believe so. I can get you that clarification now.
Is that,
It looks like March 23rd is a Monday.
It's a memo. It has specifics in there on the adjustment in there on the specific days over spring break.
So, the way, okay, wait a minute. The way it looks to middle school, elementary, let me get to elementary. Elementary, March. I'm having a hard time reading this. This is the high school. Where's the elementary? Because I get, March 24th is a Tuesday, so are they in school on Monday or off Monday?
I believe they're in school on Monday. Is that correct?
Now they'll be in school on Tuesday.
So they
Okay.
extended that one
Okay,
additional day.
so then they would start, they just get 3 days,
Yeah.
and the 20th is already okay.
Okay.
I didn't want to.
It's okay. Are there any other questions about the amended school calendars? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the item passes. With the board's permission, I would like to, before we move into item number 12, I would like to recess to our closed session so that we can take care of a little bit of business, and then we will come back out into open session. Do I have any objections?
No objection.
Okay. We are recessed to closed session. No, we will,